And Mike, my hairdresser texted to cancel my appointment today. There'll be a lot less blondes in New Zealand in 4 weeks' time. A lot of regrowth going on. We're all going to look shocking by the end of this. It's 8:07. Fortunately, I'm very good looking with longer hair, so that particular aspect of life doesn't bother me. Now, if there's a reassurance to be had, the central banks of the world seem to have taken a whatever-it-takes approach. I mean, the Fed this morning has thrown eye-watering options at it. Our Reserve Bank has cut rates, of course, entered a QE program as of yesterday. Our government upped the work assistance package yesterday as well. Grant Robertson is back with us. Good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. I'm sorry to hear about you here. That's something I think we're all going to be thinking of.
Didn't you think about that before you made these sort of measures yesterday?
Well, that's right. You know, your here has been in my mind for, frankly, years, but
Exactly.
obviously in the last few days too.
Well, it's the sacrifice I'm prepared to make for the country, Grant. Now, $9 billion you upped it to yesterday. How quickly do you think that gets soaked up?
Oh, pretty quickly. I think, judging by what I've heard overnight from businesses, this is tough time. This is such a tough time for workers and businesses. And so, we certainly heard for a number of people yesterday the relief that now this was going to be available to everybody. Basically, I think a lot of businesses are sort of doing the planning now. I spoke to one person yesterday who yesterday morning let 40 people go and then rang them back after our announcement and said, no, come back and we'll make a plan about what to do about this over the next few days. So I said from the beginning, from last week, Mike, that our first package was only the beginning, and we're just going to keep going to do the best we can to cushion the blow of this.
So when $9 billion's gone, is there another $9 billion?
Well, there is more, yes. I mean, let's just be really clear. The $9 billion is our estimate of what we think the take-up of the wage subsidy scheme will be. It's not a cap on the amount of money available. That will just be what it takes.
I've heard a couple of guesstimates of the unemployment rate. Somebody said 67,000 people could lose their jobs, or somebody said the unemployment rate could go up to 6%. That strikes me as ludicrously low, or have I misread this completely?
No, I don't think you have misread it completely, Mike. I think the real answer, of course, is nobody can put a percentage figure on it because we're in such early days of this situation. But put it this way, in the GFC, we saw unemployment reach 6.7%. This is undoubtedly going to be worse than the GFC.
Yeah. But even having said that, if it was 7, 8, 9 or 10%, I mean, there's 2.4 million people in work in this country, part-time or full-time. As bad as the number is, it still isn't the end of the world.
Look, and this is something we've got to focus on. I mean, New Zealand has a fantastic role as a food producer, and all of the things that happened in the supply chain of being food producers for the world. We continue to be able to do a lot of our work online at home that a lot of businesses in the sort of service industry do as well. And so there is still going to be economic activity. I just think it's for the people who are in the direct firing line. They're obviously going to feel it. Anyone who loses their job and the family that surrounds those people are really going to feel it. But overall, there will still be economic activity, and one of my jobs is not only to think about what we're doing in the here and now, but also what this looks like when we emerge from it. And so there's some optimism in that. I'll certainly give you that.
The Fed, I take it you're up with what the Fed did overnight. They're leaning against everything these days. Are we going to see more of that from our Reserve Bank?
Yeah, look, certainly the conversations I've been having, the daily conversations I've been having with Adrian Orr and the bank, is they also recognise that this is just going to keep evolving. So what we did over the weekend and into yesterday was sign a memorandum of understanding between myself and the governor that means that, each time he feels he needs to do something in the QE space, there's now a protocol for him to write to me and us to talk through how that works. Still independent operational decisions for him, but because in New Zealand the Reserve Bank appears on the overall Crown balance sheet, he needs an indemnity from me for him to go into that. So we saw $30 billion yesterday, which will be pumped in over the next period, and it's quite clear that he may have to come back again or may have to look at other QE-type instruments that are available. So, look, we're by no means at the end of the road on that. And, yeah, I did see what the Federal Reserve did, and you just feel, don't you, that from a monetary policy point of view, they're at beyond the limits of conventional monetary policy.
Yes.
So now we're going to see more of this kind of thing. There's no doubt of that.
See, we're talking overnight in Europe of what they're calling Corona bonds. So that's a new debt mechanism in which you sort of pool your resources and guarantee stuff. Germany and France, and their concern is that if they drag Italy and they're no good and they won't pay, etc. Are we getting into the area, if we go down that track, of inventing new mechanisms that we'll never be able to pay it back, get out of it, or can we literally write as much money into the economy as we need to?
One of the great questions, Mike, because it's such uncharted territory for the way that our financial markets work today. I think obviously people will try. I mean, not in our lifetimes. I'm sorry, in our lifetimes, but not in our history. I think the people will try to continue to use the mechanisms that are available and have been available. But I've asked that exact question of both the bank and my own officials as to where do we go that we've never been before? And there is the potential, as you say, to just keep writing out bonds until eventually nobody ever thinks they'll be paid back. You've got to think pretty carefully about the consequences of that and think about what other instruments might be available that take us to a more sustainable place.
On a domestic front, there was some, the banks came to you guys or Treasury on Friday and they want some regulatory support in helping park up mortgages and stuff. Are they going to get that?
Yeah, look, we've been in daily discussions, and as I said yesterday when we made the announcement, we've got an agreement in principle around two elements. The first of those is effectively what we're calling a business guarantee scheme. This is based on the Australian scheme around using our balance sheet to support banks to do lending effectively to businesses that were viable going into this, but because of what's happened are struggling, and we'll have the details of that to announce, I hope, if not by the end of the day, then tomorrow morning.
Okay, but they're not being held up. The stuff they want to do is not going to be an impediment.
Oh, God, no. It's just basically making sure that individual banks who've traditionally worked separately, Mike, are now being asked to work together, and there's a few rules and regs that we just need to get past on that.
How are you going to get around work visas and getting people into work where there is work? I mean, I think seasonal fruit immediately, but as people get laid off, there is work in the other economy. Is the government proactive in that, or is that up to me as an unemployed person to go and pick kiwi fruit if I want to?
No, we're working together on that. So last week, it feels like an eon ago, we announced the redeployment package, $100 million to support exactly that kind of thing. I mean, of course, in the first instance, we want people to do it themselves and get in touch and use MSD and the services they've got there to get in touch with where there is a need for workers at the moment. But, we're working closely with all of those industries, horticulture, the tourism industry, where a lot of people are losing their jobs. In New Zealand, for example, where we're working directly between them and the Ministry of Health to get Air New Zealand workers into there. So, yes, please, people, if they're in those positions, make contact with MSD, make contact with an employer, but we've got brokerage services and resources to support that. Okay.
By the way, why is the percentage on the interest rate so high for Air New Zealand?
Oh, look, that was done as a commercial loan, and we did it.
A very good loan. Geez, I can get better money than that. They're paying upwards of 9%.
Yeah, just to explain it though, both parties in that took external advice on that, and we were working on the basis of it being reasonable and appropriate. You'll understand, Mike, that in the aviation industry and the situation the aviation industry is in, that you have to be careful about where you set a rate like that. The really important thing for me and for people to hear is that that loan is available to be drawn down by Air New Zealand. From the point of view of the Crown, at any point, we can request for that to be turned into equity. And I think, look, we've got to be frank and honest about the aviation industry in the foreseeable future. It's going to look very, very different. New Zealand will have a national airline. We will continue to support Air New Zealand, but predicting a 3 or a 6 or a 9 month, horizon for airlines is pretty challenging. So they've got the money. It's available for them, and we're just going to keep monitoring it.
Although you and I disagreed last week on the business of you upping the benefits, there is seemingly, certainly in Britain and in places like America, there seems to be a universal income type approach. In other words, literally everyone gets money. Is that wise if you can't target where that money goes?
Yeah, look, and you would have noticed Australia, in fact, doubled benefits Mike, just a couple of days ago. So, people are, I think, in a sense, preparing themselves for the fact that, A, there will be more people simply out of work, and there's a big jar for people moving from paid work onto income support from the government. But I do think one of the things we all have to think about here is the fact that while, what we're doing from a health perspective is about making sure that we get on top of this virus and hope to see some improvement in a month and start to get ourselves back to a sense of normality, from an economic perspective, the notion that things will suddenly go back to normal in 1, 2, 3, 4 months is something I just don't think we can expect. Therefore, yes, you do have to be careful about the way in which we manage the schemes. Our bottom line is we're going to support people to have income. We're going to support workers and businesses to stay connected to each other. But I do think we all have to understand from an economic point of view, this is not going to be over in a quick period of time.
You been to the supermarket?
To be honest, Mike, I haven't. I've been too busy. My partner has, and he told me that there were a lot of people there. But we certainly weren't panic buying. We were just picking up the needs that we have for the next few days.
You've been disappointed by the behaviour of some New Zealanders?
I really want New Zealanders to think hard about it. I can understand the stress and the pressure that people are feeling. But we've all just got to take a step back. Supermarkets, pharmacies, banks, etc. will all be open throughout this period. There is no need to do that. And I guess what makes me a little bit sad, Mike, is the fact that not everybody is in a position to bulk buy, and we've all got to take a moment to think about the rest of the people in society, do our shopping normally, and then the shelves get restocked, and there's enough for everyone at the moment that they need it. So I wouldn't say I'm disappointed. I'm just sad that some people are finding themselves a bit left out from that. But I reckon we'll work it out over the next month.
Hopefully so. Appreciate your time as always. Grant Robertson, Finance Minister.